Grandma sold me her apartment for $1 to keep it out of greedy hands. 2 years later, those hands came reaching. I was always the one who showed up. While my cousins visited my grandmother on holidays, Christmas, maybe her birthday if they remembered, I was there every week, sometimes twice a week. It started when I was a teenager, spending summers at her apartment, learning how to work with my hands in her workshop. She taught me how to measure twice, cut once, how to sand with a grain, how to look at a piece of raw wood and see what it could become. But she taught me more than woodworking. She taught me about patience, about integrity, about the kind of quiet strength that doesn't need to announce itself. She told me stories about the war, about meeting my grandfather, about raising her children in that apartment when the neighborhood was different, rougher, full of young families trying to make something from nothing. By the time I turned 30, my grandmother had become more than family. She was my mentor, my friend, the model for the kind of woman I wanted to be. And she knew it. She saw how I showed up when others didn't. She noticed the difference between someone who calls on birthdays and someone who brings soup when you're sick, who fixes the leaky faucet without being asked, who sits and listens even when the stories repeat themselves. When she turned 85 and started thinking about what she'd leave behind, I was the natural choice for her most prized possession. The apartment wasn't just property. It was her history. Her life condensed into walls and windows and floorboards that creaked in familiar places. She bought it in 1974, the year my mother was born. Raised 3 children there. Became a widow there when my grandfather passed 15 years ago. Grew old there, surrounded by 50 years of accumulated meaning. It was worth about $185,000 on the current market, a decent sum. But to her and to me, its value couldn't be calculated in dollars. She wanted me to have it, not divided among squabbling relatives, not sold and proceeds split into fractions, whole, preserved, lived in by someone who would understand what every scratch on the workshop bench represented. The problem was taxes. A direct gift of $185,000 triggers significant gift tax consequences. My grandmother had worked hard her whole life, saved carefully, and she wasn't about to let the government take a bite out of what she wanted to pass on cleanly. She needed a legal workaround. Her lawyer advised a common solution: sell the property for a nominal amount, a $1 sale. Legally, it's a transaction, documented, notarized, registered with all the proper authorities. The price is unusual, but not illegal. Courts have upheld such sales countless times when the intent is clear estate planning. It's not a loophole. It's an established practice. 2 years ago, my grandmother executed the paperwork, bill of sale, notarization, title transfer. I became the legal owner of the apartment where she'd spent half a century of her life. I didn't move in immediately. She continued living there with my blessing. The plan was simple: she'd live out her remaining days in the home she loved, and I'd take full possession afterward. A clean transfer, properly done, between a woman and the granddaughter she trusted. I thought the hard part would be watching her get older, watching time take what it takes from everyone eventually. I didn't know the vultures were already circling. Update 1. 6 months ago, everything changed. My grandmother's health declined sharply. The mind that had been so clear, so full of stories and wisdom, began to fragment. Dementia crept in like a thief, stealing pieces of her little by little. Some days she knew me. Some days she thought I was my mother. Some days she didn't know where she was at all. She couldn't manage living alone anymore. The decision to move her to a care facility was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I sat with her while we packed a small bag of essentials. She looked around the apartment, her life, and I could see her trying to hold on to it, trying to memorize what she was leaving. The workshop, she said, one of her clearer moments. Take care of the workshop. I will, Grandma. I promise. I started going to the apartment regularly after that. Cleaning, making small repairs, honoring her space while slowly preparing to make it my own someday. Every time I walked through the door, I felt her presence even with her gone. The smell of wood shaving still lingered in the workshop. Her books lined the shelves exactly as she'd arranged them. I wasn't erasing her. I was continuing her. I thought the grief of watching her fade would be the hardest thing. Then my aunt called. We need to talk about Mom's apartment. My aunt is my mother's sister, 55 years old. And in that time, she's managed to fail at almost everything she's touched. Failed businesses, failed marriages, 3 of them. Estranged from her own children, who got tired of her borrowing money she never repaid, and her promises she never kept. She's always been the family's cautionary tale, The one everyone whispers about at gatherings when she's not there. She'd largely ignored my grandmother for years. Too busy with her own dramas, her own schemes. She'd show up at Christmas if it was convenient, maybe call on birthdays, but the weekly visits, the real presents, never. My grandmother stopped expecting anything from her a long time ago. But when my aunt heard about the $1 sale, suddenly her interest was revived. Not in my grandmother, in the apartment. I explained patiently that the apartment was legally mine now. The sale was complete, documented, registered, done. She laughed. Actually laughed, like I told a joke. A $1 sale. That's not a transaction. That's a joke. You paid $1 for a $185,000 apartment. That's fraud. That's tax evasion. That's elder abuse, convincing an old woman to sign away her property for nothing. She paused, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I've talked to a lawyer. We're going to challenge this in court and get that apartment distributed properly among the heirs. You got greedy, kid. Now you'll pay. The accusations came fast after that. Her legal theory, the $1 sale was a sham transaction. No real consideration exchanged, therefore not a valid sale. Without a valid sale, the property would remain part of my grandmother's estate to be distributed when she dies, or challenged while she's still alive on grounds of incapacity. My aunt claimed my grandmother was already showing cognitive decline when she signed the documents. That was a lie. The sale happened 2 years ago, and the dementia only started 6 months ago. But truth doesn't stop someone who's grasping for what isn't theirs. She threw everything at the wall: fraud, undue influence, elder abuse, tax evasion. If something stuck, she'd get a piece of the apartment. That was the whole strategy, not justice, just extraction. I called my lawyer immediately. Her assessment was calm but sobering. Dollar sales are legal and extremely common for estate planning. Courts uphold them regularly when there's clear documentation and the grantor was competent at the time. Her dementia now doesn't invalidate decisions she made when she was sharp. We have notarized documents. Competency wasn't challenged at the time of the sale. There's no evidence of fraud or coercion, so we're fine. She paused. Her case is weak, but she can still make you spend a lot of money defending it. That's the real game here. She's betting you'll settle rather than fight. I wouldn't settle. Couldn't. This wasn't about money. It was about my grandmother's wish, her choice, her right to give what was hers to whoever she wanted. My aunt was trying to steal that. I wouldn't let her. Update 2. My aunt had been busy. Before I even knew I needed to defend myself, she'd been politicking throughout the family, spreading her version of events. She stole the apartment from a dying old woman. She manipulated her grandmother into signing away her life's investment. The $1 price proves it was theft, not a legitimate sale. We need to fight this for what's right, for Mom, who can't fight for herself. Some relatives, I'm ashamed to say, were sympathetic. Not because they believed I'd done anything wrong. Deep down, most of them knew the kind of relationship I had with my grandmother. But they hadn't gotten an apartment either. Greed creates strange alliances. Others saw through my aunt immediately. My mother was furious. Your grandmother wanted you to have that apartment, Mom told me. She told me directly, years ago. She said you were the only one who actually cared about her as a person, not just as a source of holiday dinners. This sale was her wish, not your manipulation. My sister is doing what my sister always does, looking for something she didn't earn. Mom offered to testify about my grandmother's wishes if it came to that. It helped to have support, but family testimony is always complicated in court. Everyone has motives. Everyone can be questioned. Before full litigation, there was a mediation attempt. Me, my aunt, both lawyers, and a neutral mediator sitting around a conference table trying to find common ground that didn't exist. My aunt's opening position was delivered with the confidence of someone who believes they're being reasonable. The apartment should be sold. Proceeds split among all grandchildren and children. That's fair. That's what Mom would have wanted if she'd been thinking clearly. I kept my voice steady. Grandmother chose to give the apartment to me specifically. She had the legal right to do that. The sale is valid. A $1 sale isn't a real sale. My aunt leaned forward. You paid nothing and got everything. That's not legal. It's theft. The mediator asked what my aunt would accept to settle. Half the apartment's value. $92,500. That's my minimum. Considering what she's taken from the rest of us, it's generous. I refused. The mediation failed in under an hour. What my aunt didn't understand, or didn't care about, was that settling would mean declaring that my grandmother's wishes didn't matter. That her clear, documented, legally executed choice could be overridden by someone who'd ignored her for years. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But the legal fees were already accumulating. My lawyer required a retainer. There were filing fees, document preparation, hours of research. By the time we filed our formal response to her challenge, I'd spent $8,000. My aunt, meanwhile, had found a lawyer willing to work on contingency. If they won, the lawyer took a percentage of whatever they extracted. If they lost, my aunt paid nothing. She had nothing to lose. I was bleeding money defending what was already mine. The system, I learned, often favors the challenger, who has no skin in the game. Update 3. The case went to court 6 weeks later. My aunt's lawyer was good, I'll give her that. She presented the case as a story of exploitation, a young woman isolating an elderly relative, manipulating her during cognitive decline, extracting a valuable property for a symbolic dollar that was really no payment at all. Sham transaction, she said repeatedly. No real consideration, no true meeting of the minds, just a sophisticated form of theft dressed up in legal paperwork. She argued that my grandmother was already showing signs of cognitive decline 2 years ago when the sale was executed, that I had undue influence over a vulnerable old woman, that by accepting the apartment, I had committed elder abuse. The accusations made me sick. This was my grandmother they were talking about, the sharpest, clearest-minded woman I'd known until very recently. The woman who had made this choice deliberately, who had consulted her own lawyer, who had known exactly what she was doing and why. My lawyer countered methodically. She presented the documentation, the sale documents properly executed, the notarization unimpeachable, the title transfer completed without issue 2 years ago. She called my grandmother's doctor from the time of the sale. He testified that there were no cognitive concerns documented at that time. I saw her regularly. She was sharp, engaged, made her own decisions. There was no indication of dementia or diminished capacity. Then came the notary. She was in her 60s, with 30 years of experience witnessing exactly these kinds of documents. She remembered my grandmother clearly. She was sharp, she said from the witness stand. She knew exactly what she was doing. She told me she wanted her granddaughter to have the apartment because her granddaughter was the one who actually cared about her. Those were her words. Her granddaughter was the one who showed up. My aunt's lawyer tried to discredit her. Maybe she hadn't done a proper competency assessment. Maybe she'd been rushed. Maybe her memory was faulty after 2 years. She didn't waver. I've done this for 30 years. I know when someone is being coerced. I know when someone is confused. She was neither. She was happy about her decision. Relieved, even, like she was putting something precious in safe hands. But the moment that changed everything, the moment I saw my aunt's face go pale, was when my lawyer introduced a document she didn't know existed. My grandmother had written a letter. 2 years ago, at the time of the sale, she'd sat down with her lawyer and written a letter to be sealed and opened only if her decision was challenged. She knew her family. She knew her daughter. She knew what might happen. My lawyer read it aloud to the court. I'm giving my apartment to my granddaughter through a $1 sale because I love her and want her to have it. My other children and grandchildren have not been part of my life the way she has been. Some visit on holidays when it's convenient. Some call when they remember. But she is the one who comes every week. She is the one who learned my trade in my workshop. She is the one who listens to my stories even when I've told them before. This is my choice, made freely while I am of sound mind. My lawyer has explained the legal implications. My doctor confirms I have no cognitive impairment. I know exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. If anyone challenges this decision after I'm gone or after my mind begins to fail, know this, they are trying to take what I intentionally gave away. They are trying to override my wishes because they want something that was never meant to be theirs. My wish is clear. I have written it, signed it, and sealed it. Respect it. To my granddaughter, the apartment is yours. Take care of the workshop. Live well. Remember me. The courtroom was silent when she finished reading. My aunt stared at the table. Her lawyer shuffled papers uselessly. There was nothing to say. My grandmother had anticipated exactly this challenge and had preemptively destroyed any claim that she hadn't known what she was doing. The judge took a recess to review all evidence. When she returned, her ruling was clear and direct. The $1 sale is valid. The documentation is proper. The grantor was competent at the time of the transaction, as evidenced by medical records, notary testimony, and most compellingly by a letter written by the grantor herself anticipating this exact challenge. There is no evidence of fraud, coercion, or undue influence. The challenge is dismissed. I could have collapsed with relief. My lawyer squeezed my arm. Each party will bear their own legal costs, the judge continued. But let me be clear for the record, this was a valid estate planning transaction executed properly. The property belongs to the new owner, legally and without question. My aunt stood up abruptly and walked out without looking at me. Her lawyer followed, already packing her briefcase. Nothing gained, nothing lost for them. For me, it was $15,000 and months of stress to defend what had already been mine. But it was over. The apartment was confirmed as mine, completely. Finally. Legally. Update 4. My aunt didn't take the loss gracefully, but then, she'd never taken anything gracefully in her life. She'd spent nothing on the challenge. Her contingency lawyer absorbed the loss. But she'd also gained nothing. She tried to steal from her mother and her niece and failed. The court documents were public record. Everyone who cared to look could see exactly what she'd attempted and how thoroughly it had been rejected. The family fallout was swift and total. Even relatives who had initially been sympathetic to her fairness argument were disgusted by how she'd handled things, trying to depose a dementia patient, calling me a thief in court, disrespecting her own mother's explicit, documented wishes. She stopped being invited to family events. Not dramatically, not with any announcement. People just stopped including her, stopped returning her calls, stopped pretending that blood obligation extended to someone who saw family as a resource to exploit. She became what she'd always been, but now openly, the one who takes, the one who grasps, the one who shows up only when there's money to grab. I tried to focus on other things. The apartment. My grandmother. I visited the care facility every other day. Some days she knew me and we talked about the workshop, about the apartment, about the memories that still lived in both of us. Some days she thought I was my mother and I gently played along, not wanting to confuse her further. Some days she didn't know anyone at all and I just sat with her, holding her hand, being present. 4 months after the court ruling, her condition worsened rapidly. The doctors said it was a matter of days. I made sure someone was with her around the clock, me, my mother, the staff who had come to care about the gentle old woman in room 114. I was there at the end. She'd been unresponsive for hours, her breathing shallow and irregular. Then, suddenly, her eyes opened. Clear. Present. The fog lifted for one final moment. She looked at me and her hand found mine with surprising strength. The apartment, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. You have it? I leaned close. I have it, Grandma. It's safe. Nobody can take it. She nodded slowly. The faintest smile crossed her face. The workshop, she said. Take care of. I will. I promise. I'll take care of everything. Her eyes closed, her grip relaxed, her breathing slowed, then stopped. She died knowing her wish was honored. She died knowing that her daughter's greed couldn't steal what she'd given with love. She died with my hand in hers, in the peace of a woman whose final gift was protected. I stayed with her for a long time after. The nurses gave me space. Eventually I called my mother and we made the arrangements together. The funeral was small, family, a few of her old friends who were still alive. My aunt didn't come. Whether by choice or because no one told her, I never found out and never asked. It didn't matter. She'd lost the right to mourn the woman she'd tried to rob. At the service, my mother spoke about her mother's life, the hard work, the sacrifices, the 50 years in the apartment that had sheltered 3 generations. I spoke about what my grandmother had taught me, patience, integrity, the value of showing up. I didn't mention the court case. Didn't need to. Everyone there knew what had happened, and they knew who had been there for my grandmother in life, and who had only appeared when they smelled money. Update 5. With my grandmother gone, her will was executed. The estate wasn't large, small savings, personal possessions, the accumulated stuff of a long life. She'd been specific about what went where. Her watch went to my mother. Her wedding ring went to my uncle. Her tools, every hand plane, every chisel, every carefully maintained instrument from 50 years of woodworking, went to me. Everything else was distributed among family members according to her wishes. My aunt got nothing. Not because of the apartment dispute, that had been separate, handled years before my grandmother's death. No, my aunt got nothing because my grandmother had cut her out of the will long ago, After one too many loans that were never repaid, one too many broken promises, one too many years of being treated as a source of money rather than a mother. The will had been updated 5 years before the apartment sale. My grandmother had known exactly what her daughter was, and she'd made her choices accordingly. When my aunt heard she'd been excluded entirely, she threatened to challenge the will, too. Nobody took her seriously anymore. Her pattern was clear now: challenge everything, grasp at anything, never accept that some things simply weren't hers to take. Last I heard, she was consulting lawyers about her options. They probably told her what everyone else could see: the will was ironclad, the estate was modest anyway, and she'd already burned through whatever goodwill the family and the legal system might have extended her. I don't think about her much anymore. She's become what she always was going to become, alone with her own nature, surrounded by the consequences of a lifetime of taking. I live in my grandmother's apartment now. I moved in 3 months after her passing, once I'd finished processing the grief enough to make practical decisions. The first night, I sat in her reading chair and cried. The second night, I slept better than I had in months. By the third night, it felt like home. I've made changes, painted some walls, updated the kitchen fixtures, added my own furniture alongside hers. But I've kept the things that matter. Her books line the shelves exactly as she arranged them. Her reading chair sits by the window where the afternoon light is best. And her workshop remains almost exactly as she left it. The tools are old but maintained. I oil them the way she taught me. The workbench has 50 years of marks and stains. Every nick tells a story. I've added my own marks now, my own projects, my own accumulating history layered over hers. Tonight, I'm making something small. A picture frame. The wood is cherry, from a board she'd been saving for something special, she told me once, years ago. I think this counts. I measure, cut, sand, join. The work is meditative. The smell of sawdust fills the small space. Her presence fills it too, somehow, not supernaturally, just memorially. The muscle memory of techniques she taught me. The echo of her voice explaining how to read the grain. When the frame is finished, I mount a photograph, her at 67, me at 10. Both of us smiling, in this very room. Sawdust in our hair. A half-finished birdhouse on the bench between us. My grandfather took that photo before he passed. I hang it on the workshop wall. The apartment is quiet, full of memory, empty of my grandmother, but somehow still containing her. My aunt said a $1 sale isn't a real sale. But the law disagrees. Nominal consideration is legal, common, and routinely upheld. My grandmother's lawyer knew this. The notary knew this. The judge who ruled in my favor knew this. The only person who didn't know, or pretended not to know, was the one who wanted something she wasn't given. She accused me of elder abuse for accepting a gift from a woman who loved me. The irony still takes my breath away. The person who actually abused my grandmother was my aunt, ignoring her for years, then trying to steal from her when property was at stake. The projection was breathtaking. My grandmother wrote that letter specifically anticipating this challenge: if anyone challenges this, know they're trying to take what I intentionally gave away. She knew her daughter. She knew what would happen. She prepared for the vulture while hoping it wouldn't come. It came. The letter stopped it. My aunt had nothing to lose. Contingency lawyer. No upfront costs. I spent $15,000 defending what was already mine. The system rewards challengers and punishes owners. You can be completely right and still pay a fortune proving it. The notary remembered my grandmother clearly. She wasn't confused. She was happy. 30 years of experience witnessing documents, and she knew exactly what she saw. My aunt's lawyer tried to discredit her. Failed, because truth has a weight that speculation can't match. My grandmother died knowing her wish was honored. Her last lucid moment was asking if I had the apartment. I did. She nodded and let go. That moment was worth every dollar I spent, every hour in court, every family relationship that my aunt's greed destroyed. My aunt got nothing from the will either. My grandmother had cut her out years ago. So she tried to steal from me instead. When that failed, she was left with exactly what she deserved: nothing. Her entire strategy was theft dressed as fairness. The court saw through it. The family saw through it. Now she's alone with her own nature. My grandmother sold me her apartment for $1. It was legal. It was documented. It was her choice, made when she was sharp and clear, 2 years before dementia started stealing her mind. My aunt called it fraud, called it theft, called it elder abuse. She took me to court, tried to depose a confused old woman, tried to steal what my grandmother had intentionally given away. She failed. The judge saw the documents, heard the notary read the letter my grandmother wrote anticipating exactly this kind of challenge. The law sided with truth. The apartment is mine. My grandmother died knowing her wish was honored. She squeezed my hand at the end and asked if I had it. I did. She let go peacefully. My aunt got nothing. Not from me, not from the estate, not from anyone who saw what she really was. The $1 sale that she called worthless gave me something priceless. Continuation. I live in my grandmother's apartment now. I work in her workshop. I keep her books on her shelves. The nominal price bought me a home full of memory that no court case could put a value on. My aunt wanted to divide it, sell it, turn 50 years of life into cash to split. She didn't understand. Some things aren't measured in dollars. Some things are measured in presence, in relationship, in the difference between someone who visits every week and someone who shows up only when there's money to grab. My grandmother understood that. The law understood that. The apartment is mine. The memory is mine. The love that made it all happen, that's mine, too. My aunt can't touch any of it. Not anymore. Not ever.